When you look at it on paper, Iran should be a global economic superpower. I mean, it has everything a country could possibly want. Incredible natural resources, a young, educated population, and one of the most strategic locations on the entire planet. But the reality? Well, it's a completely different story. It's this massive economic paradox, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack.
So that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? We're going to break down the key factors that are holding back what should be one of the world's most promising economies. It's a story of just immense potential clashing head-on with a very complex and very tough reality.
In this slide, wow, it just lays the whole paradox out there, plain and simple. On one side, you have these world-class, top-tier assets, and on the other, an economy that is just dramatically underperforming. The real story, the one we're digging into, is all about that huge gap between these two realities. So just how big is this gap? All right, so first up, the superpower paradox. To really get our heads around this mystery, we've got to understand just how big this paradox is. And honestly, the numbers are kind of mind-blowing. Okay, so get this. Iran is sitting on the world's second largest natural gas reserves. Second! And the third largest oil reserves. It's got this huge, young, and educated population of 92 million people. But its GDP per capita is projected to be just $5,300. To put that into perspective for you, that's lower than war-torn Ukraine. Let that sink in for a second. So we're not just talking about a country that's underperforming. This is a huge economic anomaly. Okay, so our first clue, it's not on the outside, it's deep inside Iran's own unique economic structure. It's set up in a way that's really unlike most other countries, and it's largely because of one incredibly powerful and unusual type of organization.
And that brings us to this term, Boneyad. Now, you might not have heard of these before, but they are absolutely central to this story. Think of them as these giant conglomerates, officially called charitable trusts. They run pretty much everything, from farms to car factories, but they play by a completely different set of rules than a normal business.
And just how much power are we talking about? Well, Boneyads control an estimated 20% of the entire Iranian economy. I mean, just stop and think about that. 1/5 of everything is in the hands of these unique, state-run entities. Okay, so you might be thinking, how does this actually hurt things? Well, for starters, Boneyads don't pay taxes, and they don't publish financial reports, so there's zero transparency. This makes it pretty much impossible for a regular person, an entrepreneur, to even try to compete. On top of that, many of them are really inefficient and overstaffed, acting more like a way to ensure political loyalty than as an actual engine for economic growth. All right, that's the internal picture. Now let's look at our second clue, which comes from the outside. Because it's not just what's happening inside Iran. The country is basically sealed off from the world by these massive walls of economic pressure. International sanctions. They set off this absolutely devastating chain reaction. First, boom, they block Iran from selling its most valuable thing, oil, on the open market. Then, step 2, they're cut off from the global banking system. Imagine trying to do business when you can't easily send or receive money internationally. It's a nightmare. And finally, they can't import the key technology they need to keep their industries up to date. So what does all this isolation mean for the average person? Well, it means Iran has to rely on smugglers and expensive black markets. And that means everyday essentials. We're talking about things like critical medicines or even a new phone get way more expensive, and honestly, the quality often isn't as good. All right, so we've got the internal structure and the external pressure. But there's a third piece to this puzzle, and it's all about specific policy choices made at home that have just poured fuel on the fire. Let's just start with this one number. 90%. That is how much value the Iranian currency, the rial, has lost in just a decade. Imagine your savings just, poof, disappearing. It's a complete collapse. And to put that into real-world terms, look at this. On the black market in 2025, it takes around 900,000 rial to buy a single US dollar. Yeah, the official rate is different, but this is the reality for most people. So why is this happening? A huge part of it is this, an official inflation rate of over 40%. See, when the government can't make ends meet, partly because of those sanctions, they just print more money. And we all know what that does, right? It just makes everyone's money worth less and less. So you've got to ask, where is all the money going? Well, this gives us a clue. Between 2012 and 2020 alone, an estimated $16 billion went to supporting regional groups like Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Hamas.
And you don't have to look far to find critics inside Iran who point out the obvious. I mean, that's a huge opportunity cost. That same money could have been put to work at home, fixing crumbling roads, bridges, and especially the power plants that cause constant blackouts.
So you take all of this, the internal mess, the external walls, the policy choices, and you mix it all together. What's the final result? What's the ultimate consequence of it all? At the end of the day, it all leads to this: a massive, massive loss of Iran's single most valuable asset. And no, it's not the oil and it's not the gas. It's the people. The smart, educated, talented people who just don't see a future for themselves at home anymore. And the price tag on this brain drain? It's almost hard to wrap your head around. The estimate is around $150 billion. Not total, annually. That's the value that literally walks out the door every single year as the country's best and brightest pack their bags.
Which really brings us back to our big question, but with a new, somber twist. A country's greatest engine for growth is always its people. So if Iran is losing its greatest resource, how can that incredible potential we talked about at the beginning ever really be unlocked?